Hi. So this is the first of many videos that are going to be coming up in this series, and we are basically going to be going through different AI concepts. And in this particular case today, it's going to be Cline and Roo Cline. And I thought we would take something that I believe no one else is doing out there, and that is starting from scratch. I believe many people out there might not have the technical knowledge to have actually understand how to use these tools out of the box. And I understand so many of the different videos that exist out there actually go ahead and just assume that you know how to use the tools. And many of these tools are super technical. So what we're going to do is that we're going to start from scratch. You don't need to have any sort of like experience working with development of any kind, but I hope to get you from no experience to hopefully installing your first integrated development environment, which is going to be VS Code. Then we're going to move on to installing something like Docker, and then we'll move on to installing Cline and Roo Cline, and we'll be able to use those as your first agent. So it's going to be a long video, but by the end of this, you should ideally be set up. And we're going to start from scratch. When I say from scratch, I mean like right now, I'm literally setting up the Windows PC, and here we go. So this is brand new. It has nothing else, and it has literally just been set up. So we'll just continue to close these out. All right. So, what do we want to do first? Let me just open up a browser real quick. And of course, we're going to go for the dark mode. And I think that's it. All right. So we have everything that we want set up, but let's first go through the basics. What is even Cline? What is VS Code? What are all these things that I'm talking about right now? So for that, I'm just going to pull out a tool to sort of illustrate what exactly we're going for here. Okay, so Cline and Roo Cline are autonomous agents. And if you search here, actually, you see that Cline advertises itself as an autonomous coding agent right in your IDE, capable of creating, editing files, executing commands, using the browser, and more with your permission every step of the way. So the point of Cline is that you are always in the loop of the development. And we're going to be installing this. But for us to install this, we need an integrated development environment. And that's just short for a place where we edit code, right? So we are going to be using VS Code today. And so now that we kind of understand a little bit of what Cline is, um, Cline is just one of many agents that exist out there. So agents are basically these things that you can just give a task. And when you give them a task, they go ahead, they think on it on their own, which is the autonomous part, and then they will use existing infrastructure, and that is, like um, large language models. So instead of thinking about it like this, let's just do this. Let's just think of it as agents. And then in this particular case, it's going to be specific. It's going to be a client in this for this example. But an agent essentially has about two things going into it, and that is one, you have the data, and then two, you have the tools. So for example, I could give it a calculator, I could give it a weather prediction API, I could give it so many things. And then data, this can be in the form of files, this can be in form of a database, this can be in form of um, PDFs, right? Like anything. basically that gives your agent information. So based on these two things that the agent has, the agent will then go ahead and when given this task by the user, it will use these tools and its data that it has to actually be able to accomplish that task and give an output, right? And the output is what you want. So the whole point is that you didn't actually prompt it multiple times because this is the flow that you usually have, right? So you have your particular task, let's say, and then you have a particular outcome that you want. So what happens is you, from your task, you go to an LLM provider, for example, let's say, um, in this case, let's use ChatGPT. And ChatGPT, what you'll do is that you'll get your task, you'll pass it on to ChatGPT. ChatGPT will give you some output. You'll get that output again, and then you'll put it back into ChatGPT, and you'll keep on iterating until you're happy with whatever output you have, and then you'll get the output, right? So in this particular case, this is the usual flow that we're used to. But what we're doing is that we're abstracting away this whole thing where we're taking the output and then we're giving it back to ChatGPT, and then we keep on iterating on that. So in this particular case, by simply having an agent will know autonomously that I am supposed to iterate, and it will know how the outcome is supposed to be, and then it will stop. So that's an agent in a nutshell. And I know I haven't gone through the technical considerations and all those things. I think that will be in a separate video. But for just the layman, all you need to know is that when you give an agent a task, it should be able to perform it given the data and the tools that you've given it, and it will give you a specific output of the task that you have defined. So now that we know that, let's actually get our first IDE, and you can come to Bing, you can come to Google, and you can just look for VS Code. It should be the first one. Usually it's the first link at the top, and we're going to download that for Windows. It might take a while, but now that we have VS Code, we'll set it up. Okay, accept that. Just the basics, just select everything. You could also add these, or you could not. I mean, it's all the same, really. These are just things that I set up sometimes when I'm putting VS Code, but it's all the same. So it's going to go ahead and install. One other thing we will need is let me just cancel this real quick. We will need Node.js. So you can also just come and look for Node.js, nodejs.org. Make sure that you are on the correct URL. Sometimes you might be on the wrong URL. Okay, it's done installing, and you can see that it's going to launch Visual Studio Code. So let's finish and see what it gives us. And congratulations, you have your first IDE installed. Um, this is what it looks like. So it's just basically an interface like this, and you can go ahead and create a new file, and you can start to type different things. So for example, you could define this is a Python function, and then it will automatically pick up this is Python, and it will tell you that there's some extensions that you can install. So in this case, I'll just say pass, but you can see it gives you like highlighting for the particular language that you're using, and that's what makes them so useful. So we are not really here for that today. If there's so many places you could learn Python. Um, so maybe let's just go ahead and set this up as well. Get the Node.js while we're at it. And then let's also get um, Git actually. So you can type, in the address bar as well, Git. So we got the VS Code, we got Node, and now we're getting Git. And all these are going to kind of like show exactly why we need them when we're starting to use Cline. So let's just download this as well. Let's install the node as we wait. All right, I accept. You should read the terms and conditions. Um, I already read them, so you probably should read the terms and conditions every single time you're installing software. Anyway, just accept the defaults for now. 79 MB, that's fine. Automatically install all the necessary tools. I suggest that you go for this particular thing as well. So it will install versions of Python, Visual Studio build tools, and so many other things. But you also need to know that some of these are a bit big. So if you don't have enough space, that might be a bit of an issue. But if you do have a bit of space, like about 10 GB on your device, I think you should go for something like this. All right, so that's going to install. I might cancel this because we had put 2. And oh wait, okay, it was successfully installed. So let's finish, and then it's going to bring you the screen, and it's going to tell you that it's going to require about 3 GB of disk space to install the necessary tools. I think it's important that you do this because then you'll be able to, you won't have to struggle with installing Python separately and all those other things. So let's just press enter. You also need to press enter again to accept Chocolati and all the other things that are going to come along with it. So when you press enter twice, it is going to start doing an install, and you're going to see a PowerShell script, a PowerShell session pop up. Don't be scared. This is just it installing some of the other packages that you need, and you can keep track of this to actually see what it's installing. I know for a fact that it's going to install Python, and it's also going to install um, some of the other packages that are needed. So there's no need to actually keep track of it. This, we can just put it down and wait for it. So you can see it's telling that Python is not installed, and it's going to go and pick the latest version of Python, which should be 3.12. All right, let's put that down for a second. We also did download Git, so I'll do this and then I'll pin this so that we actually have that. So we'll get Git as well. Next. Let's see. I think we should keep the defaults here. Okay. We can say default editor. We could say VS Code as Git's default editor. That should be fine. Adjusting the name of the initial branch, that's fine. Adjusting your path environment, Git from the command line using third-party software. Okay, I mean that's fine. We can use this. We'll just go with the defaults again. Again, the defaults. Yeah, just keep the defaults as well here. Yeah, keep the defaults. Keep the default. Keep the default. Yeah, just keep that. And then that should actually install Git as well. So far we have installed a couple of things, but just to get the full picture, we have VS Code, which is where we're going to be editing our code. We have Node.js, um, which is a JavaScript runtime. JavaScript is a programming language. So if we are going to be running anything to do with JavaScript, we will need Node.js in one way or another, especially if we're going to be using something like React, which I think you will be if you're going to be building websites and some of these other things that you might find along the way, web applications and so many other things actually that we need in our day-to-day life really are built around React and JavaScript. All right, so this is done. We don't need to view the release notes, so that's finished. Let me just check on this as well. Okay, it seems to have paused at some point. Okay, I just needed to press enter. So if you find it that's actually pausing at this, maybe you just press enter and then you'll be able to continue. So, all right, let's keep going. We have node, and then we have git. Git is what is going to be used to take snapshots between different versions of our code. So you do need Git. And then the last thing we're going to need is Docker for some of the tools. But since it's not immediately needed, we can, put this aside for now. It also does need a few things, such as restarting the machine, and also you need quite the resources to run Docker, especially if you're going to be, running this on a laptop with something like 4 GB RAM. That might be a bit difficult. Maybe 8 GB RAM would be good if you're going to be running the tools with Docker. Without the tools, you can definitely still run the rest of this. You just need to be cautious of that. All right, so it's getting Python 3.13, so that's fine as well. And we can go ahead and we can actually install Cline, and maybe you can see some of the errors that are going to come about if you don't have the right things installed. So I'm just going to increase the font on this by 1, and then I'm going to come here to extensions, so you can just see this icon on the side here, or if you really wanted to, you could have come to File, and then you could have come to View. Actually, you could have just come to View, and then you could have come to Extensions. So it's the same thing, really. And then what we're going to look for is Cline. So Cline works inside of VS Code, and we're going to install Cline. You go for the first one with the most stars and the most downloads. And then we're also going to install Roo Cline. Roo Cline is the same thing as Cline, but you'll see which one you like best. Sometimes Roo Cline has features that Cline doesn't have, and Cline might have features that Roo Cline doesn't have. Um, Really, I just use the two interchangeably, but they are the same thing under the hood. Okay, so it's actually installed, and you can tell by the icon here, which shows you Cline, and then this is Roo Cline. So we have that. So um, now that we have these two, we need to understand, okay, how do these things work exactly? So you do need an LLM provider still. So you need an OpenAI, you need a Claude, you need a Gemini, you need any one of those to actually be able to use this, because what this does is for you is that it automates the process of prompting and doing all the tedious back and forth tasks, but you still need one of these. So whatever provider you're going to use, and you can see that when you open Client for the first time, it will give you kind of like a rundown of like the things that it does. But it does recommend that you use Claude 3.5 Sonnet because it is the best coding agent, I mean coding LLM right now. And that's, subjective, but I do believe it's the best one as well. And so you can see here that there's so many different providers. There's OpenRouter, Anthropic, Google Gemini, DeepSeek, Mistral, uh, GCP, Vertex AI, AWS Bedrock, OpenAI, and so many others, right? But for this particular case, we're going to be looking for some of the free providers, so we can do something. I think we should probably use, in this case, I know Mistral has a free tier, so you can actually use Mistral. I know Google Gemini also does have a free tier, and we're going to check out how to use maybe those two. And then if we can also, or if you do have a GitHub account, you can actually go ahead and set that up, and you can use the GitHub account and the free credits that come with it to actually be able to access the these particular models. So you can see that it'll give you access to ChatGPT 4, 4.0, and Claude 3.5 Sonnet, but you are rate limited to about 50 messages a day, if I'm not mistaken, if you don't have the pro tier. If you have the pro tier, or if you're a student in a university, I would suggest that you actually go ahead and get the um, GitHub education account, education pack, sorry, and that will give you access to the pro tier. So when you get access to this, you will be able to have unlimited messages on GitHub, on the GitHub Copilot, right? So you can see it's actually one of the things that they mention here. You get GitHub Copilot, and that gives you access to GitHub Spaces and so many other things, right? So I think this should show you the actual different things. Okay, so this is what you get if you have a GitHub account, right? And I've shown you how to create a GitHub account in my last video, which I am going to actually link in the description below, and you'll be able to follow that to create a GitHub account from scratch as well. There's no assumption of prior knowledge or anything. So let's just check to see if it's done. It's not yet done on this particular end. We can just leave that in the background again. And let's try one of the free providers. So Google Gemini is free as well for some of the models. OpenAI is not free, and OpenRouter is not free. So let's try Mistral. I think Mistral is one of the better free alternatives. So when we go to Mistral, just type in Mistral here. And we could actually just type in Mistral API key and see what it brings for us. Okay, Mistral AI API, that's good. We want this. Okay, and then we want API. Sorry, we want La Platform. I think I definitely butchered that, but yeah. So for this, we do need an email and we do need a password. I believe I will be using the email and password that I have. Let me just sign up here real quick. Okay, so you want to come to Codestral, and that is one of their best models for coding actually. And then what you will do is that once you get to Codestral, you'll have to generate an API key, and it will give you an API key right here, right? So then you can just select this. You can copy that. We can bring it here. We can put it inside of Cline, and we'll say, let's go. All right, so now we have everything that we need. So we're going to need to first go through some settings before anything else, right? When you come here to the settings icon, you'll be able to see your API providers. What your API provider is like which LLM are you actually going to use. Some services like OpenRouter allow you to use multiple of these particular LLMs all at once. And I would advise that if you're a heavy user, or if you use so many different LLMs at once, rather than you paying for each and every single one of them, you can just come here, you can just pay one time and you can get to use all the models that they have. So we can check out the different models. They have so many. They even have DeepSeek. They have Google Gemini. They have Minimax. They have Codestraw, as you can see here actually as well. And some of the models are free, and you can actually use these models for free within this particular chat interface. So you can just come here and then you can chat with any single one of these models, right? So let's say the coding models, and then you can tell them, you can start texting something, and then you can say create an online shop selling cars. Let's just go for something like that. And then you will, of course, need to sign up. I do not want to sign up right now, but if you do, then you will also have the ability to get an API key. We can go into a completely different video for OpenRouter, but right now we're going to focus on using Mistral. And then you can apply that knowledge to any other one of these providers that you can actually get. So you will see that some of these providers do not support images or computer use or prompt caching, and that's probably going to save you some cache if you're using prompt caching, no pun intended. But yeah, so now that we have all of this information, we can then actually look at another thing. So you will come down here and you can see some of the different things that they've actually implemented in the new version. But there's also this, which is auto approve. And you might want to accept that because you want it to be able to read files and directories. You want it to be able to edit files. You want it to be able to execute safe commands. I would not advise you to check use the browser, although you can. Um, but we could actually, I mean, we could just put it up just to see, although this particular model won't support it. And then use MCP servers. When you say use MCP servers, that means that we'll be able to give it some extra tools, and you'll be able to see that in a second. So use MCP servers. The only problem with this is that you'll need to have Docker active. So we're going to see that in a few seconds. So maximum requests, we can put that to 20, that's fine. Enable notifications in case um, it needs to tell us something. And then finally, we'll just select auto approve. So with all these, we've basically selected actually all of the auto approve options. We can just put this down. And then there's two mods. And this is where it becomes really useful. So studies have shown that if you are making anything, and remember, these are agents, so that means that you can make websites, you can make essays, you can make reports, you can make anything that you can really think of. These agents can actually be able to interact with files and come up with them, right? So any sort of task that you're going to use these LLMs for greatly benefits from you giving it some time to actually plan that task out. And what that means is that you should, you would ideally go to something like OpenAI and tell it, hey, I want to create a website maybe for selling cars. And then you're going to give it some time to actually come up with a game plan, or tell it to actually come up with like an implementation plan. And then after that, after it thinks on the implementation plan, then it's going to work on it. That gives it more structure, and that means that you're going to waste less tokens trying to direct the model to actually do something that is the right way. So in this particular case, you also have something like that. Cline gives you two options, which is the plan phase. And once you put it in the plan phase, you're going to get this yellow highlight here, and you will not be able to, it will not be able to code or interact with any of the, or interact directly with the files in cases in terms of editing. And then there's act mode. So you switch to each one of these depending on what you're doing. If you're in the beginning phase, I would suggest that you switch to plan. You plan out the idea of what you want to build, and then you go to the act mode only once you have that built out and you agree with it. So in this case, I just want to make a simple application. So I'm going to say, let's make a React application. And I remember I told you that React is basically what powers most of the websites that we use these days. The beautiful websites that you come across, it's most likely React. It could be something else, but I know that people are leaning mostly towards React, and so that's why I will use React. You could just tell it create a website, and it will figure it out as well. But I would say make a React application that, um, how about we just say make the game of Snake in React. All right, make the game of Snake in React, and then we are going to let it plan, and let's see. And you can see that it's already doing um, all this. So this is from the free API that we're using. So we're not paying for this, but we also need to understand that Mistral might not be the best model out there. So you might want to use something like Sonnet, and then telling us that Git must be installed. So let's see the instructions that we need to actually follow. Windows, then quit and reopen VS Code. So we did install the Git, but now we need to actually reinstall this. So let's just actually close this out. Let's reopen it. If I can find it, interestingly enough. VS Code, all right? Not Visual Studio Code. There's a big difference between those two. All right, so now that we're back, the first thing that I'm going to do is actually, let's open a folder so that we can keep our work like in the same place. So let's create a folder called, oops, no, that wasn't right. Yes, I trust authors, but let's instead open folder, and let's go to documents, and then let's create a new document, no, new folder, and we're going to call it maybe client test. Okay, snake game actually. Let's call it snake game. We're going to select that folder, And then once it opens up and then you see the word snake game here, you just know that you're inside of that particular folder. So there are a couple of things that we might need to do before that. So Cline doesn't work too well with Windows PowerShell. And for you to get to this, you may ask how I got to this. You need to go to terminal. So you need to create a new terminal. So when you create a new terminal, the first thing that you want to do is that you want to come to this particular thing, these particular icons here. There's a drop down. You're going to select that, and then you're going to configure the terminal select the default profile, and you are going to select git bash as your default profile. So once you do that, I'm just going to go to these icons here. Again, terminal, new terminal, and you will see a different setup. So something like this. So I tried this last time and it didn't work too well. Let's hope that it works better this time. So now I'm going to come back to Cline again. Um, I believe it should have our task still here. All right, so you can see the recent task. So it's this. And then it's telling you to create a snake game in React. We need to gather some information and plan the structure of the project. Here's some questions to help. Do you want any specific requirements, features in mind for the snake game? Example, should it have different levels? So I'm just going to, you can go back and forth inside of this plan mod with the LLM, and it will be able to put in place whatever you speak of. So I'm going to say, I want a basic snake game, and it should have a green snake with red food pellets. Nothing too fancy. And it should be 8-bit in nature. Okay. And style. I think style is a much better word here. Style, right? And we can say that, okay, if you can go through all the different suggestions that it's given you, but I'm just going to say the game should work offline. So when I'm done with that, I'm going to hit this arrow again, and it's going to go back to the model. And then you can see that it's now generated a full structure of what we're going to actually need. So it's going to give you the game style, offline functionality, the basics, all of this. So you can read through this. And if you like this, I really don't have anything wrong with this. You can just move from plan, and then you can just touch act, and the same model will go ahead and it will do some stuff. So you can see that here it is actually going ahead and creating something. Sometimes you will need to accept. So it's here it's telling you okay to proceed. You will need to type in Y. Okay, cool. It's created some things. It's installing some things. But this is all only possible because we installed Node. If you did not install Node in an earlier step, then that means that you're probably going to have some issues running this because NPX does come with Node. So you need to keep that in mind. Or if your installation was not great, then this part will not be able to actually move on. So you need to keep track of that bit and also the Git part. So now you see that after we restarted, the Git notification doesn't show up anymore. And you are going to see once it starts actually installing the different commands, that Git helps you keep track of the steps you take in your particular website or in your particular application or in your particular essay, whatever the task is. So still installing. And you can see that the agent will wait until this installation finishes. And if this installation finishes, it will automatically give the feedback of whatever's happening inside of this terminal to this agent, which is Cline. And so that's really the gist of this. So it's just using the different tools that it has available to it to be able to do things that we would have done manually. And that's where it stands out the most. So this does take some time. Um, I do think we can, for a second, just go and see what uh, Roo Cline looks like. So you can see that Roo Cline basically looks the same as Cline. Um, it just looks a bit more, um, a little different, but you can see that you still have the same welcome screen, and you can select the same, what do you call them? The same providers, really. So we have Mistral, we have that API key that I think we just put in here, and then it's done, right? So you also have, Roo Cline, and it pretty much is the same thing, except you will come and then you'll find that um, it will allow you to do certain things. So it still has the same mods, except it also has an ask mod. So if you want to ask anything to the model, you can ask it directly here. And then this is the default profile. You might not want to change that. And then this will help you enhance a prompt. So if you have a prompt and you want it to be made better, you can just put that here. And same things, really. Like, there's not too much, except it has more. If you're more of a power user, you can use this because it gives you more settings in the advanced section, but it's pretty much the same thing as Cline. So um, let's just go back to Cline and see what it's still waiting for this as well. So let's see how that goes. And maybe while I'm at this, we can talk about MCP, and which is a way for us to extend the the agents that we have. So I already told you that agents pretty much work by us giving them the tools and then also the data. So in this particular case, the tools that we have given access to the agent right now is our file system. So that means it can read and write files. And then we've also given it access to the terminal, so it can read anything inside of the terminal. But we can also give it things like a browser, and that means that it can actually browse the web for us and return results. We can also give it a search engine, like let's say like Google search. Most people use Brave search though, and then it will be able to actually go out and search different things online on its own. So really, the tools just help enhance the agents and make them do more things. And the more tools that you can give it, the more it can get creative. Um, Hopefully, this is almost done. And so that's the whole point of MCP. So I've made a separate write-up on this, and I will also link that down below. But you can actually just go ahead and then use the write-up, the different settings that I put inside that write-up, and put them here. But for these to actually work, you will need to actually have Docker installed. So for the people who actually want to go ahead and have that installed, we'll be able to install Docker in a second. Let's just check out if this is almost done. Actually, while we're at it, we could install Docker. There were a few issues, but you can see that it's going to find out um, what the issue was, and it's going to automatically run the codes to fix some of those issues. So let's go ahead and download Docker. So www.docker.com, and then you want to download Docker Desktop. Obviously, in this case, we'll want to install. So if you're not sure which version you have here, for Windows, it's really easy. You just really come down here, you right click on the Windows icon, you come to System, and then inside of the system, you'll be able to see that, okay, what is my system type? I will allow access. So that's fine. If that shows up, you just allow access and then that should be fine. And I think actually this is the agent running in the background. So you can see that it's starting. It already started some of the servers. So it already made the changes. And you can see that it's actually trying to run it right now. So this came up, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get the errors that came up. Maybe I can get them from here. I can get them from like the screen. I'm just going to give it to it. So I'm going to say that, okay, this happened. We're working, but I will just tell it there is some issues with the code running. Check the terminal. So it's trying to fix the different issues that were actually coming up, and then we'll be able to see. So where were we? We were still downloading Docker. So I said that you can come here, and then when you have access to this, you'll be able to see that this is an x64 based processor. So when we come here to download, we'll see that we will need an AMD 64 actually. So it's going to download, and we have this really downloading like, and it's already done. Great. Let's just check to see what it's doing. It's installed some more things. And then let's see if it's going to get it right this time. Okay, as it's still downloading, we can install Docker. All right, so we have Docker and it's verifying the package. This I think is the biggest and the one which actually takes the most RAM while running. And so you can select, if you really don't want it, I guess, to run that with that much, you can use, you can uncheck this. We could test it and see if it works out. If it doesn't, we could just go back. So let's try this and see how it goes. But it did give me a notification that everything is done. So it's telling me that that was done. And then saying see changes. Let's run this command that it's telling you. So it's saying it's finished everything. So it's all right. Let's try this. Let's try navigating to this. So you can see that it has created the game. I haven't touched any single piece of the code. You can see that when you check the file structure now, you have an actual React application and everything's been made. So let's try out the game. So I am clicking in. Okay, so the snake is moving a bit fast, but it does work. And when we actually do hit the side, it will actually end the game. So this is good. I actually like it. Maybe we can make some changes. So now that you're done with all this, we can just tell it the snake moves too fast. Slow it down and add a counter, add a point system actually. So you could plan first. That's also fine. Um, it will make it better. You will realize, however, that the best way to do this, especially if you're going to be doing planning and then acting, is that you use thinking models. So, for example, things like ChatGPT O1 and DeepSeek R1 to actually do the thinking or the planning mod in this particular case. And then you use things like Codestrol, or you use things like uh, Claude 3.5 Sonnet to actually do the actual work of the coding, and that makes it that you actually perform way better than anything else. And that is what you should actually, I would recommend that. But if you can't do that, then you can just use the same model. You can just put it in plan mode, and then after that you can put it in act mode, and then in plan mode you can actually tell it what you want it to do and all these other things. So yeah, um let's just wait and see what it does. I do know it's going to have some issues with Create React app because it's a bit old and it is deprecated at this point, but I just want to make sure that it creates something for the purpose of this video, and then we'll be able to see what next. All right, so it says that it's finished. Let's check again. Hmm, I don't see a difference, but let's play and see. Yes, well, it is slower than it was last time. I do not see the point system, but you can always tell it to, change that. So the snake does keep getting longer, and then I think that was me who actually knocked into something. So let me try that again and see if it actually loads anything. All right, all right, cool. Yeah, so you can actually see that you can start building any sort of thing that you actually wanted. So let's try one more thing. I think I did run into myself there. Uh, let's try one more thing. Let's actually try another example. So this has been a coding task, but let's try a writing task, right? So and so for example, if I had made a mistake on that and the app didn't turn out too well, I can always just go back to the point where I had um, it working, and I can just, select this. So I can come here to this, restore, and I say restore the workspace or restore the workspace only, and this will only restore the code that was here at this point. So if we do this, you'll come back and then you realize that the snake had actually been extremely fast. Actually, this is where we had some issues. So I'm just going to come back down here. Oh, there's some issues. Okay, so when did it fix it? It fixed it here. So we can come back here and then you can say restore workspace only. And then when we reload the page, so we're going to restore the workspace on this particular task, and then let's see, because I remember it was working. Okay, let's see. Okay, so that's not working. I am going to close as many of these as I possibly can. Sometimes it will create way too many. And then I am going to terminal, new terminal, and I am actually going to manually run this by doing npm run start. Okay, so I think I'll just I'll just restore it to this. Okay, so it seems maybe something is wrong with the restoration uh thing. Let's try it again. Oh, we need to be inside of SnakeGame actually. So then we can actually do something like npm run start. And then that should work now. So we are back to the should be back to the same changes. And yep, so we're back to the same changes. So let's try something else now, actually. So let's I know you must restart Windows to complete the installation. I think let's restart and then let's actually go ahead and do the second task and also see how we can add these MCP servers. So let's close code that we have from down here. And I want to create an icon on the home page so that we can actually be able to do this. Okay, so let's try again. And this time we are going to do two things. We are actually going to um, try something else. We're going to accept this. I think this is coming from Docker. And then we can skip this. That's fine. We can also skip this as well. And should start the Docker engine. So you don't need to create an account to actually use Docker. You do, however, need to create an account if you want to maybe create images and some other things, but I don't think that's inside the scope of what most people who are watching this will actually be trying to do. So let's see if it actually starts up. But as this is starting, let's actually add some of those MCP servers that I was talking about. So in this particular case, we are going to open a new file, open a new folder, and that folder is going to be called, I made the same mistake. We're going to open a folder, and that folder is going to be called, nope, again, wrong place. New folder, let's call it writing task. And then let's select that folder. And this time, we're going to open Cline, but we're going to go to MCP servers. So when we go to MCP servers, you're going to see that there's nothing here right now. And then you can click edit, and it's going to bring you something like this. Now, we need to find them, but since I already have some write-ups on this, I'm just going to copy and paste the code from my write-up. So I'm just going to go here. We will not restore the pages, but I will go to blog.buckingabronson.com, and we can go to the model context protocol right here. And at the very bottom, you'll see that there are some different default configurations. So let's try to see what we can give it. Let's give it, um, let's give it this. Of course, you can do this with any other one of the things. And actually, I'm going to show I could show you that we can just copy this as it is, and we can bring it into this place. Just paste it, and that should work as expected. Um, and when you're done with this, you need to save it, of course. Once you save it, it's going to give you a bunch of errors. Okay, so I'll look into this. I'll see why this isn't working, and then maybe I'll get back. But for now, I just wanted us to actually write something to show that you can actually do a writing task with this. And the writing task is going to be that I'm going to ask it to write a report on mm, the butterfly effect. And I can tell it to plan it first. So then when I do that and I switch to planning, it's going to first plan what it's going to write, the intended audience, and it's going to ask you some questions. I'm going to say this is for personal consumption. Make it nice. And so it's going to do something, and then after that I can ask it to actually act. And so when I do that, it's going to go ahead and then it's going to actually write out the file. So you see, this is a very powerful way of you just writing reports or maybe other things that you might need to. And you can see that it's actually going ahead and telling you the butterfly effect is a concept that describes the idea that a small change at the beginning of a process can have a large, unpredictable effect later on. The phenomenon is often illustrated by a metaphor of a butterfly flapping its wings in one part of the world, potentially causing a hurricane in another part of the world. The butterfly effect is a fundamental concept in chaos theory and meteorology, highlighting the sensitivity of complex systems to initial conditions. And you can see that this is a very good written piece, actually. So, this is it. This is kind of like the introduction to the different pieces. I would have loved for Docker to actually work, but it seems that it's not doing as well as I thought as it would be, and we are not able to run the MCP servers. I will, however, check into that. But for a start, I think it's very possible for you to just go ahead and get in here, change to a different provider, find the API keys for these different places. You can also use Google Gemini. The next tutorial is going to be about DeepSeek R1. I think you have noticed that there's a particular provider here called um, DeepSeek, and they have some of the best models right now. I am going to be doing a particular the video in that on that. Um, do stay tuned, but this is it. This is getting started with Cline from scratch. If you are using Mac OS or if you are using Linux, it should be the same thing, just a few tweaks here and there and what exactly it is that you install. Um, and also, you will have a much smoother time on Mac OS and Linux. That's the reason as to why I haven't made the tutorials for that, because I feel like most of the people who are making the tutorials are making tutorials for those particular ecosystems. Here we've gone all the way from scratch to the way from you downloading your first IDE, downloading Node.js, and then installing Git and being able to actually run some of these commands. So I hope that this helps you start to build different things. You see, I built a snake game in one day. I built a project the other day in just 2 days. So I'm hoping that you can use this in your day-to-day life to see more better improvements in everything that you do. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and let's mm, try again to actually make some more stuff from scratch. We're going to be making more content from scratch, and I hope you stay tuned. Thank you.